eat meat. I'm not even a big fan of fake meat.
Yeah.
Like if it's available and that's what it is, I'll eat it. But like I don't have that thing of like, oh, I'm gonna eat that. You know, like that hamburger. But again, I just feel like the way that things are going, humans are so full of themselves that sometimes you gotta come with these alternatives and slowly and trying to introduce people to new things that might be a little bit less damaging to actually go for the big changes. So if Meat Lab means that less cows will be suffering or whatever, you know, if that huge amount of lands in the Amazon in Brazil, you know, like it's not gonna have to be destroyed to feed the pig because of soy and all that, you know, like, so do I agree with it? I don't think it's necessary. I think we could do it smarter. But you know what I mean? But I feel like some things just take the course of what it is. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, you saw my painting I did of Vandana Shiva recently, and she is like the queen of anti-GMOs. No, I don't know. She's one of the most famous activists around rights for farmers, like small farmers in India, and the effects of Monsanto, how they released all these genetically modified seeds. So this is farming of like, this is growing crops, not animal agriculture. And the effects that those seeds had, like they were so unsustainable, and they meant like the next year's crops would be like non-resistant to a lot of bugs. They ruined all the soils, and there was this mass of suicides in India, like of small farmers. There were about 400,000 that killed themselves, and she started this movement of saving seeds, and there's an amazing documentary on it called The Seeds of Vandana Shiva. And yeah, so she's warning people about this big push at the moment around, like with big agriculture and big pharma sort of entwined, these big corporations that are trying to push the genetic modification. And actually, I think it may have come up in the debate last night, because National are wanting to lift the ban on genetic modification. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's good. There's a lot of papers that are saying that it will be detrimental to our health, and it's already detrimental to the environment, just at the level from what we've seen in the past few years, like in places where they're trialing it, like India and Africa. So yeah, and Bill Gates is someone who he owns, like I think he's the largest owner of land in the States. As an individual, not like BlackRock, like a corporation. But yeah, he's really in support of these GMOs and lab meat and sort of like degrading the natural way of producing food. And
I would say I'm against GMOs. Like I think we're doing enough to people with processed meats. I think processed meats are kind of borderline. Obviously they're not the healthiest options out there, but GMOs kind of go that step further with not knowing actually what is inside these meats. I don't think that the ban should be lifted. I think it should remain, especially in New Zealand. We kind of place ourselves as this, progressive culture.
And we have such amazing resources and amazing soil.
Exactly. And it's kind of we're kind of throwing that reputation away when you want to go to like a global effort to do GMOs. I don't understand it quite well. Like it's just it's an unnecessary step. Yeah.
It'll make people like Bill Gates and anyone that has investments in those companies extremely rich, and then it will just further the degradation of health.
So bro, it's interesting that we're tapping into that thing of like, it goes back to what is the current system that most of the Western at least operates, right, which is capitalism in many countries. First of all, can you guys hear each other? This one is yours, bro, and this one is yours, and I forgot to tell if you need anything, you just can check that. Awesome. When you're studying politics, when you're going through a course of politics, do you get knowledge like about the history of, surely you do, but I mean, in a way that it's more focused on what the scenario is right now, or you get to learn different ways of governing and like how things were operating in different times? Like, can you just give me like a big picture of what it is?
So at the University of Auckland, Politics and International Relations, the course itself is kind of designed where first and second year you have, or first year you have the more, the foundations of Western politics and law as a subject, which is 109. And then you have global politics and then New Zealand politics as well. Those are the main ones. I took 107 and 109, which was the foundations of Western politics and law and New Zealand politics. So those are kind of the introductory topics you can take. Foundations of Western politics and law was more surrounded by the idea of ancient philosophy. So Aristotle, when he was talking about the ideal state and if we're political animals by nature, kind of learn about all of that side of things. It's really theoretical, really philosophical. In my opinion, it was really boring, but it was kind of
gives you a foundation.
It was kind of good to understand, you know, where these first ideas came from and kind of how that links, how things today link back to yesterday's topics. Where 107 was more informal around the idea of, you know, domestic politics, you know, what happens here, how our systems work, how they kind of operate on a global scale as well. Level 2, stage 2, politics. So there's 209, which is the second year equivalent to 109. So that was more like modern political thought. So it's kind of taking the historic perspective from first year, turning it into like an 18th century kind of political thought. I didn't see much difference. We kind of focused on utilitarianism more in second year, which is about, you know, the correct way of seeing people and the ultimate, how would you describe it? The choice, the right choice that would impact the most people. So you act based on other people. Mm-hmm. So this is a really common example used by heaps of people globally. If you had 5 people on a track and then on the other side of the track there was a lever and you were holding the lever, would you let the train hit those people, or you pull the lever and divert the train to hit nothing? So would you sacrifice 5 people, or, oh no, there's a 1 person on the other side of the track. So would you sacrifice 5 people, or would you sacrifice 1? And so obviously you'd probably say, oh, I'd sacrifice 1 and save 5. And that's just like the utility, you know, you're doing an action for the better of other people. Mm-hmm. And there's lots more to it as well. But yeah, I focused on that mainly in that course. And then third year's split. So you kind of go off into your own areas. But yeah, that's politics at the University of Auckland.
Right. Yeah. And then international relations come under the same umbrella, or that's...
Yeah, so it's kind of, you see more of international relations in the second year, in the second semester. So we had the option of taking a paper this semester, which was critical security studies, which I was talking about before. It's a lot more focused on global perspectives on how to deal with issues. There's heaps of papers in third year as well that you can do at an international kind of perspective. You kind of you have a choice whether to go down the philosophical path or the practical path. I kind of choose the practical path because it's more relevant. That's why I didn't take philosophy, because I just find it really boring. But yeah, it's good.
I find it interesting when a lot of ways of thinking come from Aristotle, you know, like, and that group, you know, like, love it. Like, I love the stoicism and all those things. Like, I love that. But I feel like sometimes there's even racism there, because we ignore a lot of like African philosophers, you know, like even Egyptians, you know, like people keep saying, oh, how did the pyramids were made? Man, I don't know, but maybe a lot of people suffered to do that. And you keep saying that it was aliens, you know, like.
Well, it's not easy to lift a 1 ton, you know, block of concrete.
Nah, but like, but like how many stories we choose not to tell and not to look back on them and validate different groups, because nowadays there's racism in this world that we live in. So like we kind of choose, it's like probably the classic example is the image of Jesus.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many times, every 2, 3 years, 5 years, someone comes and say, now we have these new studies, like now we've done the DNA, now his hair was like this, and probably he had a big nose. Man, and good old surfer Jesus, man, is still rocking, man, selling books and stuff. You know, like, doesn't matter how many times you tell people some ideas, they just lost.
I think the idea of politics is very westernized. Like it was founded in the Western culture, but I think it is also important to kind of dive in and look at the other government kind of ideals of control, if that makes sense. Like how you look at the indigenous people of the Amazon. How do they govern themselves? You know, they've got the rights of themselves. They govern themselves. They do their own thing. And centralized governments stay away from that. They let them do their own, whatever they want to do. We should be looking into, is that effective? Not just democracy. But yeah.
What do you think about democracy, Emma? Democracy, big word, democracy. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like at the moment we don't have that much of a say over what's happening politically. I mean, we've got the elections coming up, but it's quite it's not so nice of a round this year with the battle of the two Chris's. And I feel like it's there's not as much hope really for this round, and like you were saying, it's kind of status quo at the moment, but there are some cool parties coming through. I want to give a shout out to NZ Loyal. They're having their meeting right now in Thames, so if anyone in the Coromandel area wants to check them out, Liz Gunn is in Thames. One of the churches there are having their meeting with I believe his name is Ray Cobb, the candidate for Coromandel. And he's an ex-cop, and he's got a lot of love for this community, and I was going to be there tonight, but I came and did this instead. So
here you are.
If people want to check them out, go to their website and have a look at their policies. Like if you're someone who's wanting, an anti-globalist kind of voice in our political system where there really isn't any from like the main parties. I mean, Winston has sort of come out and said sort of like what Trump has done, like where they were initially for these mandates and for the control, and they've turned it around as like a thing to get votes, and they're now, disingenuinely saying like, oh, you guys were gaslit. But yeah, so that's
Winnie's got to go.
That's just one thing I wanted to say.
Man, now it's time for you for a shout out, brother. You got to do it. I'm going to give a shout out as well.
Okay, I'll give a shout out to the wonderful Helen White, Mount Albert candidate for Labour. She's great. Focused on raising the middle and lower incomes of families and individuals. But I think it's great overall that we've got all this talent, fresh talent coming through. I think it's good that we have a variety in this democracy. I don't think it should just be focused on, the two main parties. I think, we should shine light onto these smaller ones, which is why I like these like the Moana interviews and, just news producers and news presenters that want to give others a go.
Yeah.
I think that's what democracy is about. I mean, you don't have to agree with anything that anyone else says. I mean, it's up to your ideology to make that. But I think it's good that we have a variety in New Zealand. Yeah,
our media, the mainstreams or legacy media at the moment is so biased towards the main parties.
Yeah, I definitely think that the media should move away from, I feel like, this is my personal opinion, I feel like mainstream media, like News Hub and One News and News Talk ZB and New Zealand Herald, all of these different branches have such a say in who votes for who.
Yeah, they do.
It just needs to stop. It's important that everyone's informed about issues, but I think the narratives and the opinion pieces that are put out are kind of misleading in some places, and it kind of pushes social cohesion a little bit sideways. And
our government has paid our media companies to side with them. Like, especially around the COVID years, there was like 55 million that was spent.
I don't know about the facts on that one.
So the thing with media, it's a good topic because you guys can help me with that. If the budget situation interferes on that, right? Because some parties obviously can afford more than others for ads, and what you're saying makes sense. You know, like even if you give equal opportunity, then you have someone giving their opinion right next to it. You know, like it will really take people to a different direction. They can play a very dangerous game there. But at the end of the day, bro, there's a lot of interest in the media, in the people in the media as well, right? For the lobby and who is in control, isn't it? So it's just pretty much like backing and all this stuff.
One thing I noticed when I was doing a bit of like research for this today, a lot of the comment sections on YouTube for News Hub, New Zealand Herald, like all of those main sites, all the comments are turned off. They don't want people connecting and having a voice. They just want to assert their
What do you think
narrative.
about that? Because I see your point.
Yeah. And they try and they try and say that there'll be hate speech, but I believe that what they're really worried about is people dissenting against these corporate elites and these monopolies, these corporations
Selling
that
too
are
many
funding.
troops.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious, I think. And anyone that does put out genuine hate speech usually gets smashed, and they're, you know, but it's, I don't think.
Just before I take that to you, bro, because I want to ask if you would have a good idea for how the media should be part of it. But just before we do that, shout out to all the beautiful people. We got so many people watching our live streams now. Hey, like it's so cool. And it's been like that for the last 3 shows that we've done. So shout out for all the beautiful people watching Altbays live. That is cool. Taiwa Wolf, my man, howdy. I'm annoyed. I missed the last live. You did, man. How come? I watched it later and it was so interesting. Thank you. Pan Badass says, hi everyone. Did you do any study on Sir Graham Latimer? Have you guys heard his name?
No, I haven't.
And then Ben says, thank you. He was my grandfather. Lawyers and accountants wrote the history books. Ben, we'll get in touch with you later and learn more about your grandfather, man. Yay. And Alyssa Curtis says, yes. Helen, shout out. Thanks so much for everyone who is watching us right now. Bro, I see your point. I agree. There should be more regulation and more ways of like making that a bit more fair.
Yeah.
How should we do that? Would you have a take on it? Because media is there to inform. This is a media outlet. Yeah. You know, so do we come up with rules? And then if we come up with rules, someone will say, well, come on, what's wrong with these rules? It should be like whatever, you know, so it's touchy. It's complicated.
There's a big barrier when it comes to, again, like how you enforce certain things upon companies, like media companies. I think what they're doing around, like I said, opinion pieces, how it's coming from a what do you call them? A news outlet person. I don't know what they're called. Reporter. Mm-hmm. If they're coming from a reporter, then and it's an opinion piece from someone, it's kind of like, are you having a biased view on it? And if you're in a mainstream media outlet like News Hub or News Talk ZB, then should you be allowed to? I mean, small media like this where you're getting guests on should be fine. But, I mean, I don't really have a strong view in the sense where it should be enforced. I think they just kind of need to bring the ropes in a little bit, kind of, you know, be a bit more sensible around.
Just have integrity.
Yeah. And give fairness as well. I think fairness is a big thing. Like if you're going to give someone an interview, like if you're going to give, let's say you give Chris Hipkins an interview, give Chris Luxon one as well. Don't just do one and then expect nothing from the other. And I think that's the whole integrity thing that you're bringing up as well. Like, it's important to have both.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
When it's sort of like I don't know, is TVNZ government owned? This might not.
It gets
be
funding,
around.
yes.
Yeah. When it's getting funding like that, there should be more representation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a bunch of humans who get their salaries and they don't want to give up on their salary.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like, you know, and not giving shit to capitalism, but of course that's my shout out to all the punks and hippies out there in the world giving shit to capitalism. Keep giving shit to capitalism because I don't see anything wrong in making a living and getting some money and buying things for you. But like, it's very upsetting that the sense of competition is never ending. So like the more you get, doesn't matter how much you get, there will be someone who gets more than you.
Yeah.
And you will never be satisfied because money does that to people.
Yeah.
You know, like the people who say that it doesn't, they don't have money.
Yeah.
They don't know how it is. I don't know how it is, but I understand the concept. You know, like I see sad people. They're not even bad. Sometimes you hear, oh, but there's those bad people. I say they're not bad. They're like unaware of all the realities. If you grew up in a small town with a lot of privilege, first of all, you cannot even acknowledge your privilege. So you cannot even acknowledge your privilege. You will not understand what is to have necessities in life and all those things, you know?
Yeah.
So you will think that meritocracy, which is a very common thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but like we all have opportunities. You should work harder. What do you mean? The guy putting the tar seal on the road, you know, on the roads, or the one cleaning all over the place where you were working the whole day. Are you saying that he's not working
people
hard?
should,
You know, like, so that for me is the upsetting thing with money. And when we're governed, when we are in a system that operates in that mentality of it's all about the competition, we don't even talk about salaries.
Yeah.
Why do people feel, like no one actually opens up and say, this is how much I make? Maybe you should, because maybe the guy next to you is working more than you, making less because you found a way through, you know, like, so.
One thing I wanted to say is like I've heard a lot of people have this discussion around capitalism, and like we've got this especially in the youth today, like in the West, like such an anti-capitalist movement and more sort of Marxist communist kind of thing. But from who I've been listening to, like it really doesn't seem like we have true Adam Smith capitalism. Like we have corporate monopolies. We have these giant corporations that are supported by the governments that are just taking away power from small communities, small business people. And yeah, I don't know.
Who is Adam Smith again? Just so we can tap into him and have a look.
I think he was one of the original, I don't know. I don't know too much about the history of capitalism, but I think he wrote a lot of theory around it and like had that sort of vision, that original like grassroots thing of what it was meant to be, where everyone has the equal opportunity to price whatever they want and like actual fair competition, which I don't know. I don't know too much about this.
If you're coming from the same background, if you're coming from the same place, then it does make sense, right?
Yeah.
I always kind of had a look. I always looked at the two parties here in New Zealand, National and Labour. Sorry, the two main competitors. Labour's more. This is a quote from Marianne Williamson. Quoted.
Oh, cool.
Labour's more by the people, for the people, and of the people. Whereas National is a government that would be for the corporations, by the corporations, by the corporations. It shouldn't be by the corporations. Corporations shouldn't have a say or a say as they do on decision making as, for example, the United States does. Like I don't like National's kind of perception on, you know, profit and companies, how that relates or an interest towards Labour's view, where it's by the people, for the people, and of the people. It's you can understand. It's hard to explain, but it's
and it's kind of flipped a little bit now as well. Like
in
particularly
certain times,
in the States, like the Democrats who are like the America's version of Labor, they are all now funded. They are the corporations. Like both sides are kind of funded, and now a lot of the because I guess the right-wing people are generally about their own personal freedoms and and their rights, but I don't know. There's people who it's quite a tricky thing. Like in some ways, I feel like the left and right, they have people just have a lot of the same values in common, but just go about achieving them different ways. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a very
there's
intricate kind of...
There's darkness on both sides. Like if you look at someone like Biden and you look at...
I'd say there's probably about 95% more darkness on one side than the other. Especially far right and far left. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
When did you start tapping into a more left-leaning life?
I grew up with... It's hard to say. I don't know what my mum's values are, but my dad and my brother are very vocal around kind of who they vote for and what they see. They're very right-wing people, national and ACT voters. I wasn't, but I was kind of not sheltered. I didn't have access to information as easy at a really young age. I remember hearing the word government when I was about 9 or 8 or something, from what I can remember. I took a left-leaning view at things when Jacinda came in 2017, when she kind of just won with negotiations. I looked at her and how she humanized things in 2017, and that's what kind of made me think you do need to look after the working class people. You do need to have a view on te tiriti that is appropriate and not discriminative like National's views. I just, as soon as I found out that National and ACT kind of had their, I wouldn't say anti-Māori, well, ACT yes, but National is just more like, can't be bothered doing anything about it. I identified with Labour because they're responsible how they do things socially, like they're socially progressive, but they're responsible about how they go about the progression. If that makes sense. There's still a lot more. I think there's still a lot more to be done around te tiriti and the rights of Māori. But those are my main drivers for why I'm Labour, is because I am a student. I am a lower class resident. I work for what I have. And ultimately, just all my ideologies align with the party.
I think, I have a very similar sort of story to you. And when Jacinda came in, I was all for her. I idolized her, all of her speaking points, and particularly around that, the area of my body, my choice, because she was taking abortion off the Crimes Act, and I was so about that. And her whole mantra of be kind to everyone. And then like I was saying before, I was absolutely heartbroken when she, put the mandates in place, and suddenly, it's not my body, my choice. It's we don't give doctors a say. We are the only source of truth. So that's where she sort of isolated a lot of her initial supporters, like me.
Do you, for both of you, do you feel like we have to agree and support whatever party we choose to support, regardless?
No, I think it's very nuanced. You're probably never going to agree with every policy of a party. And I guess that's why it's good that there is a mix of parties in government, eh?
Well, I definitely think we should have a wealth tax. We should. I mean, or a capital gains. Come on.
Yeah.
Can you explain capital gains in simple words? Do you have that ability? I'm looking for someone to give us some light on capital gains.
I can. So it's pretty much, let's say you are a millionaire and you wanted to go buy a yacht, a big super yacht. Pretty much what that's saying is by capital, so that's a capital investment, and that would be taxed. That purchase would be taxed at a rate, which would hopefully give money back to the middle class, the lower class people.
Right.
So at the moment, there's not.
Like it's not an essential thing or whatever. Like it's an investment that you're doing. So you
so for example, if I had the money to go and buy a $25 million boat, why wouldn't you pay something towards something? You know what I mean? Like it's just, I think that it should be something to think about. But
right. I like that. That was good. That was easy.
That's a really simple.
But no. It's good to put into simple words, because I feel like most of the times politicians try to speak easy, but they just sound silly. They just sound dumb. They're actually not speaking to the masses. They're going around and around and around, and then people get bored. And then you're trying. But like for me, when I watch, like for me, it's clear that there's a little game being played.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, and generalizing probably is not the way to go, because some politicians are quite inspiring. I like a few actually in New Zealand that I watch them, and I'm like, you're onto something, like you're really trying your best. But when you get those big ones, the ones running like for the main parties, I'm always a bit skeptical. I'm like, maybe you're trying to look too nice, you know, and I don't know if you're being yourself.
They're puppets.
My biggest thing around, the main party leaders is you can answer yes and no. Like it doesn't hurt anyone if you don't say yes or no. And, you've seen, and lately you've seen Chris Luxon, not actually answer any questions, yes or no, in terms of his foreign buyers tax. Why don't you just release the numbers? It's not a hard thing to do. You've obviously done them somewhere, Nicola. Why don't you just release them?
Yeah,
I mean, people have asked for them.
Yeah, everyone right now is craving more transparency with government, like not just in New Zealand, in the States massively, especially, all these Western governments that are, tight with the World Economic Forum and the UN and the big pharma companies. And there's been like no transparency with like the deals that have been done like around the vaccines and
Why are people skeptical about parties like Green Party, about parties that have a straight up like focus on natural resources, like getting nature back into what it should be, because I feel like that in Brazil, here, anywhere that someone talks about, unless it's a very like rich country where poverty is not a thing, then it's like, in Denmark or whatever. I don't even know what's going on there. I'm just saying. But like usually you will hear something like that, right? They're doing great things with their environmental issues. I'm like, of course they have nothing else to deal with, like there's no poverty or whatever. But like I feel like there's this thing, it's an upsetting thing, but there's this tendency to not take people who talk about the environment seriously. Yeah, and it hurts me in a way. Why is that? Why do we do that?
I think it's the narrative. Conflict? I think it's the narrative coming out of the right that on the far right, there isn't a climate emergency. Climate change isn't real. Central right, it's more like, let's not do it now. Let's do it in 10 years or let's do it in 5 years. It's not an immediate problem, whereas the Greens and Labour have identified that it is a problem. The Greens obviously far left, so they're right now, right here. What are you wasting time on? Labour's more like, how would I describe this? Like, let's do it now, but let's get everything in place to ensure that we are meeting targets at a responsible level. And like also looking out for people as well.
What do you think?
I mean, I know a lot of people who you would probably deem far right that care a lot about the environment. Of course, there's these people like who have businesses that feel threatened by different things like carbon tax, like around here. And there's a lot of, I think a lot of people around, just like actually globally, are worried about the weaponization of something like climate change by these corporate oligarchs against ordinary people. They think that someone like Bill Gates will be able to fly his private jet wherever he wants. He has the money to be able to just, like, those carbon
Elon
tax
will go to the moon.
it means nothing to them, and ordinary lower class people will suffer.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fear in this at the moment around the 15-minute cities, and Green has sort of they sort of touch on some of the some of their visions kind of align with a bit of that 15-minute city stuff that the World Economic Forum is proposing, and that China are sort of trialing right now, where you have, and in theory, it's not a bad idea, where you live in an area. I mean, in places like the UK, it's sort of already happening and kind of works, where you're living somewhere where it takes 15 minutes, you can walk to wherever all your needs are served. So you've got a supermarket there, you can get a haircut, you can get gas, you've got schools, you've got all the essential services within 15 minutes of walking distance. But there's a lot of there's a lot of fear around that, like with rural communities. Like Coromandel recently has been we've been hit by all these big weather events, and our roads have been closed. And on the media, there's been all this talk around managed retreat. And and it's like everyone should have the chance to decide like where they want to live. Like there's a lot of government overreach at the moment, particularly over the COVID years. People felt like there was so much encroachment on their fundamental rights, like their bodies, and with the lockdowns, their businesses not being able to open, and kids not going to school, like all these different things, and like how they shut down the borders and things like that. But I mean, there's like, I think I really like some of the Green Party's proposals around making cities more green. Like, why not? Like, we all want clean water. We all want more, we'd love to have like community gardens everywhere and like everything accessible to us. But I think,
the problem that I've heard come up a lot around, making cities more green, it's a great thing. We studied it in urban development and geography. It's around the intensification that people have the biggest problems with, and there's a lot of misinformation around these intensified buildings and homes. So, a lot of these housing intensifications and new developments are actually for 50 plus people, and everyone thinks that is the term NIMBY. Are you familiar with the term NIMBY?
No.
Not in my backyard. So some people think that like social housing is a really good thing, and it gets people off the streets, and it's just a really cheap and affordable, warm, dry place for people to, live. But if it was to happen next to them, they wouldn't like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we tend to see this big problem in Aotearoa, that it's an intensification problem that people are really scared about. And I think what needs to happen is more community involvement around these processes to inform people about who's living where. Not that it should be a problem, but just to make people aware that it's not all bad. Like there are really good things happening.
Yeah.
And especially Auckland, Wellington, all these places, Tauranga, Rotorua.
I love that. That's so common. It happens everywhere. You know,
I live in a flat that's right next door to a new development, and for the whole year we've been hearing construction and everything. But I know I don't have a problem with it, because I know that there's going to be 56 better off people living in that place than they are now, wherever they are. And they are cheap. They are for people over the age of 50 who need a cheap option. You need to cater, you need to have a supply for this demand. You need to have lower, middle and higher developments for everyone. You need to have the option there. You shouldn't expect a student to have to pay $250 a week to live in a dry, mouldy house You know, like they should have an option to live in a cheap place that's new, warm, dry. And I do agree with the Greens on that policy, the WAFs on the houses. I do agree with that.
Bro, we cool that you brought up the roads, because we were talking about that when I went to pick you up. And you gave me a cool take on something that I hear quite often around here. So I'll just put into a big picture quickly. So State Highway 25 collapsed. Is that right, Emma?
Yeah.
State Highway 25.
Yeah, the Kopu Hikuai.
Kopu Hikuai caused a lot of issues for the people in the Coromandel. And I'm not an engineer. I don't know how long is too long, but it seems to be taking a long time. And then a very common thing to say, especially from the people who in other situations won't like Chinese, but then they say, why don't we bring the Chinese to build roads and all that stuff? And for an ignorant like me, you start to buy into that idea. You're like, well, there must be a deal or something that if the Chinese are so good to build roads, like, why can't we? And then you just gave me something cool. So what happens with, or what happened to some of the countries who actually took some help from what you know? You don't have to compromise, but like from what you know.
National's policy is to let China invest in our roads, right? And everyone's like, oh, that could be quite a good idea. But it wouldn't be, because you're not only removing our roads from our own investments and kind of pushing it over there instead of bringing it back here and controlling it. The roads themselves that China has made in Italy and in...
Are they toll roads?
No, they would be toll roads international, but someone's got to pay for them if it's not China. The roads that they use, or the materials that they use, have surfaced online lately that they actually pop up. So the roads pop up. So I said before that it's like a hairbrush. Imagine a hairbrush as a road. That's what it's like driving over it. It's just like I think it's it bubbles underneath, and then the broken rock on top, the broken stone on top, I should say, kind of staggers, and it's almost like continuous speed bumps. If you look it up, it's really, really common everywhere because of China's investments into them, and it's appalling. I don't think.
Right, so National are wanting China to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
The bro is saying tofu concrete.
Is that what it's called?
Tofu. Nah, I think it's just because probably that it would happen like tofu. It would just break.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, our chat is alive for sure. So Penn said, thank you. He was my grandfather. Sir Graham was a nationalist, chairman of the Maori Council, a knight, commander of the realm. He stopped crown forestry taking land, and is the reason we have Te Reo on air. Shout out.
Props to him.
We want to talk about that for sure. And then Tai Wolf said, well, that is an impressive resume. It is. He only said, you have to ask yourself, how best can I serve my people? And I like that. This is one of the things, that's how I've... it's the same when someone tells me that they're not going to vote. Because I often think about that. I'm like, for years, I opposed it. I was like, I don't want to participate. And then I started to understand that it's happening regardless of my participation and affecting me. Yeah. So even if in my mental state and my mindset and the amount of foods that I eat and how warm my bed is, and if I'm fulfilled with all of that, and I really feel like whoever is there, it won't affect my good morning sunshine. I should think about the most vulnerable person that I know and maybe try to cast a vote for that person. Yeah. You know,
that's a beautiful idea.
Do you guys have a take on non-voters?
Yep. Pretty strong.
That goes first.
Pretty strong too. A lot of people don't understand what it means when, a margin or a margin of the population don't vote. So essentially what it means is that everyone added up when they finished voting. So 2020s, I think it was 82% of New Zealand population that were eligible voted. And ultimately what that does is that leaves, if it was 82%, it would leave the rest. So that would be, I can't do the maths.
How many percent, I'm sorry, did you say?
It was about 82% last election. That would leave 18% undecided. So that would get split among somehow percentage-wise between each party. So I know that the Māori Party last election got a seat gained from the non-voters. Labour gained 5 seats from the non-voters. ACT and the Greens also gained 1 each, I'm pretty sure. And National gained, I think, 4. So that was the rest added up. Because obviously if there's a block of known voters, then it's not entirely accurate. So some seats have to go somewhere. And so a lot of people don't know that. And also what I'll say is that if you don't vote...
So it's compared to the amount of votes that those parties got.
Yeah. And I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was something. And the other thing is people always ask, oh, why should I vote? I'm like, first of all, you pay taxes.
Yeah.
Actually, side run, lower the voting age to 16. We'll come back to that, I reckon.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But people who don't vote, it's your taxes. That is being, you pay taxes, you should decide on where those taxes are going to be spent and who spends them. So you should vote. If you don't, there are political consequences of not voting. Like I just mentioned, how some parties do get more seats than others, determined on whether or not you vote or not.
So maybe not voting because you oppose a party might support the party you oppose to. You know, because it might put one of those guys into power. You don't vote, and then
So I always stand by. Don't vote. What would you call it? Don't vote strategically. It just doesn't really work all too well if you vote strategically. Because a common example you see is between the far left, the far right, and the central left and rights. So, for example, Labour and the Greens. If heaps of Labour supporters started voting for Greens and split their vote to make sure that, I don't know, something happened, then what you'd see is the National Party might sweep through the middle in a candidacy vote because Labour doesn't have enough because the Greens stole, or the other way around. Depends, like
who's who.
Yeah. So you could actually, by strategically voting, you could make way for a party that the majority doesn't actually want. So I always encourage to vote for the party that you want to vote for. Yeah. Regardless.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I've heard, because I'm voting for a small party, and I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, you're just throwing away your vote. Like, no, you're not. No. Yeah. It's important to support your values and whatever.
Because if you put it, so whoever you're voting for, and then I'm voting for Labour, obviously, I'm clear about that.
Yeah.
That is how you get the party vote up for both of them and the candidacy votes up for both of them. If you split it, you might not actually get a result that you want. So it's important that you vote. For example, you could have a split vote. That's the nature of MMP. You could vote a Green candidate and then vote the ACT Party, for example. Not that anyone would probably do that. But that's fine. Just don't... Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard... It depends on the electorate, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'm against split voting, personally.
Emma, do you agree with lowering... Oh, what a tricky word lowering the voting age?
I've had discussions with this about friends, and obviously when I was in high school, I was all for lowering the voting age. But
you change your mind.
Yeah, I've kind of changed my mind. Like my 16-year-old self, like, had no concept of like what I've learned now about, just politics and
but
I don't know, and I wasn't paying taxes either. I feel like if you're not paying taxes, if you haven't been working, should you really have
but
a
you
say?
can work when you're 16, right?
Yeah, you can work, but I wasn't working.
And you can go to jail.
A lot of my friends
can you actually
yeah, and you can have sex
juvie.
at 16. You can make life at that age.
And I'm listening to you, and I love conversations like this. Like, we obviously don't have to agree with everything. I'm always keen to change my mind, but I often think when someone tells me your point of view, I think I didn't know all the other things that I could do when I was 16 as well, and I was still legally allowed to do them. You know,
were
now
you allowed to vote in Brazil at 16?
Were we at 16, Taylor? We could, we could vote. Yeah, yeah, man.
Yes.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, we can vote at 16.
We can vote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
16 in Brazil. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the time that I was going for don't vote. I even remember because in Brazil, Taylor might correct me, there was this myth, and then I realized it was a myth, because in Brazil we sell it as the safest and more reliable way of counting votes, which is the machine that we sell to a lot of countries. And you put the number, and then there's the green button to confirm the number you're voting for, the red one if you made a mistake. But then there's the white one, that it means that you are voting white, whatever, which means there was this myth that if you would pick that white, you were giving your vote to the majority of the voters. So kind of like playing with that idea of what you said, you know, like by omitting, by not voting, your vote still kind of like counts.
Yeah.
So even though apparently that was not true, it still made sense to me. I realized that by not voting, and I have no problems with people who don't vote, you know, like I feel like that's the beauty of human nature. I hate the way that politics operates.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the most disgusting way to separate all of us into parties. I feel like it's a shame. It's deplorable. But that's what's happening.
That's why I wish we had consensus in Parliament. If you agreed with one policy, vote for it. Don't just go with what your party says. I don't like this. You know, it's...
So what would be the way? What's the name of that? Consensus? Consensus. Just having a system that is
like
for
in
the policies.
Parliament, obviously you've got all the different parties.
So do they have to vote for whatever their party represents?
It depends on the kind of vote. So let's say a bill came through and the National Party said, we don't like this, we don't want this. I don't know what it's called, I can't remember, but there's a vote where they actually have to vote how the party's going to vote.
Oh, that's
and I think that should be knocked on the head. I think it should be if you agree with the law or bill, vote for it.
Yeah, I think most people would feel that way.
And it should honestly, it should come down to your community's perspective too, especially if you're an MP. Like
100%.
Not just your own beliefs. Especially if you're religious. I don't think that should even play a part in decision making. But with the Make It 16 thing, I was really conflicted on it, and then I made my mind up that I am for it. I am for Make It 16 because obviously you pay income tax at 16 if you are working, and most people, there is some people that choose not to, which is absolutely fine, but most people will and do. And I can't remember what year it was, but I can't remember what year it was, but they paid, that age group 16 to 17 paid $93 million in income tax. Wow. Which is a lot. Yeah. And I think it's really unfair that they don't actually have a say in how that money is spent. Like I've raised arguments with I've tried to get a really fair consensus on this issue because I didn't know. I was like, okay, like what's right, what's wrong? I've talked to a range of people that are against it, that are for it. A lot of people say, I don't think they should be allowed to vote because like I know how immature I was at 16 and the decisions I could have made and how it would have impacted people today. Fair enough. But also you have quite a few elderly who naturally get really immature, which is expected because, you know.
And we've got an aging population as well, so I guess lowering it would even it out a little bit.
Yeah, like it's so kind of counteracting.
To the top as well. After 60, you stop voting.
Like I reckon,
That'd
like
be funny.
like if you're gonna cut
Not 60, not up 60. Just sit in the middle.
yeah,
Shit.
but you can consent
Amazing.
at 16. You can get a driver's license. You know, you're contributing to society at 16 properly. You should be able to vote. And I mean, I do like what they've done with the voting at local elections at the moment, which is a good step.
Is that 16 now?
Yeah, well, it's
Oh,
moving
okay,
in
so
6.
they're-
They've introduced a bill.
Yeah.
Shout out to make it 16. And
It's a movement in New Zealand.
Yeah,
right? It makes
yeah,
16. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
and yeah, I think it's a really, really good movement. It's a progressive one at that as well. But yeah, it's just something that we should all be looking into because it is socially progressive and it is a good thing.
And I'm joking about 60-year-old people not voting. We should all vote, all of us. The
Yes.
100-year-old people.
Speaking of voter
should
turnout,
vote.
18 to 24 this year have 31% haven't enrolled.
Haven't
This year.
Wow.
31% of us.
I can
13, 18
change.
to
I can
24.
change things.
I
The
know.
amount of people can
So
change.
go and
results.
enroll if you're listening. Go and
Yeah.
enroll if
How
you're.
do you enroll, bro?
You can visit vote.nz and go and enroll there. Otherwise, you can go and see the electoral enroll New Zealand when they come to your town.
Do you guys feel like whoever's in the power or people who retain more wealth and power, for them, it's better to make politics complicated so people decide not to engage?
It's a big question.
100%.
Yeah?
It's intentionally that way, I'm sure.
Well, I don't think. Oh, you
But
go.
we got mad.
So you go.
Like in certain places, and with you, like I'd be interested in hearing like in Brazil what it was like your perspective on the system over there, and how complicated is that?
I feel like sometimes with big spaces, with big countries like that, we are so used to corruption. It's just everywhere
Yeah.
in every little town and every single thing. Like, so the most horrendous corruption that you could think, you know, like a politician is taking the money out of the children's hospital and the lunch for the schools. Like you would think, oh my God, like that's
who would
Tuesday
do that?
morning. It's just like
Oh
it
my
happens
God.
all the time everywhere. So I feel like that's what puts most of the young people off in Brazil. So you are caught up in that capitalist mind of like, I just gotta make it work.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bother giving attention to whoever's in the power because they're all stealing anyway. And
When
I
there's
cannot
corruption.
even and I cannot even understand what they're saying. So I'll just carry on. But by saying that, then I look at small countries where corruption is just organized. You know, like I see
Yeah.
rich small countries as corrupted as, but then it's on your face. You don't even realize that it's just going to places and you're like, how did that money was accepted? Like the salaries are just bigger.
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just an easier way to deviate or to put, I cannot say that because then it sounds like I'm accusing, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's just more. It's not that only. It's not like he got, because in Brazil like you would have this thing. Oh, the guy got caught with like putting dollars in his underwear, you know, like putting his socks. Like, and you're less likely to hear about these things in small countries like New Zealand. But like there would be other ways to do that.
I
you know?
think one of the most frustrating things for people, politically, issue that people have is the bureaucracy, like the amount of money that's paid to consultants and the money that the tax money that's wasted on bureaucracy and administration, and like you hear of like $20 million going to this project and nothing gets done for years, and it's
Hey,
just like
come on,
so
man.
discouraging. But
Meanwhile, we have young people tapping into politics, and I'm sure the course at Auckland University is pretty full.
Yeah, it is actually. It's,
So?
really big.
oh wow, that doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me though.
Auckland University has the biggest student numbers in the country, so I'm not surprised. And obviously Auckland's a very political place. And I'd be actually disheartened if there weren't as many people in the classes as there were, because a lot of people do, you know, a lot of values are shared in that space, and you can kind of get a grounding from it, you know, between what's actually going on, like in ideology speaking terms, and what's not. So, for example, social progress in New Zealand, in one of the classes, there's a lot coming out of the left, and then there's also a lot coming out on the right. But in class, we get to speak on those theories and what one's actually better for what, and it's between left and right. It's really weird how the classes kind of, especially in 107, I found in first year, it was very separate. So it tended to be all the lefties sit on the left and all the righties sit on the right. I don't know why. It was quite interesting, but we kind of had little outbursts of debates in class. It was kind of cool.
Did you find most of your class were left based? Yeah,
100%.
You'd imagine.
And it's quite funny that is. It's like the more, and it's actually funny because in second year, it's even more left.
Oh yeah.
And there's only a couple, like, I don't really like the term left and right. Conservative, let's say.
Yeah.
There's a lot less conservative people and a lot more socially progressive people. And you kind of wonder, like, why is that?
I think people on the right in politics tend to not do courses. They tend to be people with businesses that have other, I think a lot of those main politicians are
I've heard from
CEOs
different people and different friends and older people who will say that as you get older, you become more conservative.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like it's a natural thing? Or like it could happen even with you, even with you, bro, being like so
I think
on your values right now.
I think it's your position in life. I think if you've worked really hard actually, no, I take that back. Everyone works hard for what they have. But
if you built something from a place where it would be probably less likely, should we put it that way?
It's a really hard thing to kind of say without getting, cancelled. But I would say, it depends on your position. If I was a business owner, I mean, to be fair, I'd probably still vote Labour because I care about people too much in the sense where I'm not.
But when you say that again, not trying to push it people can cancel you, but then it sounds like the people from the rights, they don't care about people, and from what I hear, they would never say that. They will have twisted or different ways, but like
they definitely still care about people. There's no denying that. Like, it's just the humanity effect in people that people just do care about people. But if we're looking at it as a theoretical framework, I hate theory, but it tends to come out everywhere.
It's important.
Yeah. And you kind of scale it on layers. You have... It's really hard to explain. You have the socially progressive people who... For example, Te Pāti Māori, the Greens and Labour, who are parties for the working class, for Māori, for segregated communities, for climate change and all that. And then you have the parties that are for the wealthy, the, I would say... business owners and wealthy, pretty much. That's about it. And it's all on. So it's not about who you care for, if you care for people or not. It's more about. I don't know. It's a hard one to explain properly without sounding
because even businesses owners. They might be in tricky situations as well. Yeah. Maybe they're better than a lot of people who have the 9 to 5 and have to be worried about getting fired. But they have different worries to stress about. And who knows, maybe those suicide rates might even be bigger for people who have to deal with that because the pressure is even.
I think it would be.
So that's why for me, it's a systematic thing. That's why for me, politics, it's so like, I look at it and it looks like a game, like a board game. And I'm like, man, like this is nothing more than a game. But like, it doesn't seem to me like that there are big winners apart from the ones outside of the game, you know, like the big guys. Because even when I hear someone like a good friend who runs a business and he's doing the best, oh no, but I'm going to vote for that one, you know, because people can work harder and achieve. Like, they're still insecure. They're still struggling to keep that business open. And I try to explain to them, I'm like, bro, you're so much closer to the ones struggling than to the ones who are making big.
Oh yeah, like banks.
You know, like, you know, a classic example in New Zealand, tradies and teachers.
Yeah.
Tradies give shit to teachers. Oh, you guys have all the time off and you keep striking and keep everything. And then teachers go and say, oh, the tradies make a lot of money just to like make holes on things, and you have all the machines that does the work for you. And I'm like, you're both not understanding that like you're on the same boats with big holes and trying to take water out of it. You know, like, it doesn't matter how much you think you're good. Like, there's people making much more than you.
Yeah.
And you're just fighting with your own.
Yeah.
You're just becoming weaker.
Yeah.
By doing that.
When I explain like huge corporate, you know, ideology, it's more so the banks than anything. Like, I don't see how the banks can be profiting like that, especially when we're in a cost of living crisis. Like, I just don't think that that's morally acceptable.
No way. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I think people on both left and right, we are all against these corporate elites, these corporate oligarchs that are, you know, the heads of businesses like Pfizer and all of these, you know, the defense contractors that are making all these money out of the foreign wars, and big agriculture. It's those people who are, I guess you could say, separate from.
I've always said to people that if I was ever in a position where I was making enough, like a lot of money, I was like living a comfortable life, I would only take what I would need to live a comfortable life. I wouldn't have that excess of money just sitting there. Like, one of my big dreams is to, you know, go over to Africa and invest in water wells and, you know, put water wells in for the vulnerable, because I don't think that people should be living without these humanitarianism essentials, like a roof over your head. Like, we can eradicate poverty in this country
quickly.
We should have. I mean, I don't think it's acceptable that we have people on the streets, and people use the argument of, oh yeah, but you know, we work, and you know, we work for you work for what you've got, and you know, and it's the same thing with the benefit. But people need it. If you don't have it, then you're just going to drive poverty higher. Yeah,
and we get more crime.
And it's bad enough that we actually have poverty. Like, I don't think anyone should be I've never experienced like real poverty, and I know that
I think our country prevents it for most people.
Yeah,
I think everyone can access a benefit.
I feel like there is poverty but no misery. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
Poverty exists. People are in the poverty.
Yeah, definitely.
Rates there, but they're not miserable. Like, they're not having to.
Well, one thing I say to people is, and they say, "Oh, I don't like the benefit. I don't think people should have the benefit." I'm like, so would you rather a street like in LA where you have a whole footpath on both sides covered in tents with people who can't afford the basic essentials to live a happy and healthy life? You know, like. The benefit is there for people that need it to be able to kind of get a step ahead in life. If you take that away, and people are still going to be like, oh, there's people everywhere. These homeless is crazy. So it's like, no matter what you do, you can't win, but you just have to know what the right decision is in that sense. And I think that, I think people need to have basic essentials. I think it's a human right to actually have
I agree.
all these things. And I've always said, if I ever have too much money, I will give most of it away. I don't need $100,000 sitting in my bank account to live a happy life. I mean, I could, like, right now, I live off $328 a week. I'm happy as. I don't need this big income. Obviously, when I start working full time, I'll probably earn a little bit more.
It might change.
Exactly, yeah.
But then there will be
That depends on the
plans and
situation.
actions that will support that too, which New Zealand does, right? If you have kids, you receive, you get some money as well to support the kids you have and all that stuff, right? So if you keep adding those helps, I feel like that's one of the humane things that most people miss out. There's no problem in supporting people.
Yeah.
There's no problem at all to make sure that everybody's okay.
Someone.
Yeah, like don't be like, no, why are they getting money because they have children? Man, you don't have children, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I get stressed out just by children crying next to me, and I work at this school. So like imagine raising 5 of them. I don't know how it is, so if some money will actually help with babysitters, with foods, with a lot of things, man, let it happen. Same for a roof. Like for me, it's so disheartening that people don't have a roof. But just quickly change the subject. I didn't say that to you, Emma, but the main reason why we brought Matt here, it's not about politics. It's because he's actually taking us on a yacht, man.
Wow.
Now he's like, oh, where do I put my face after all these things? Nah, I'm joking. So what's your full-time job, bro?
So I'm part-time.
Part-time, sorry. Part-time.
Yeah. Well, it's actually casual work. It's not even part-time. So I work at Ocean Eagles.
Shout out.
Yeah. So Ocean Eagle Charters.
Yeah.
So they're just a party yacht boat.
Cool.
Something for catamaran. Get to meet heaps of different people. Really, really fun. Like, it's super fun. Get to just see people having fun. It's the best. I reckon it's the best job that I've ever had. And it's just, bartending on a yacht.
Are they just
Well, I call it a yacht.
around?
It's actually, it doesn't have a sail, so it's not a yacht. It's my boss would probably be like, oh, it's not a yacht, Matt. It's a motor boat.
Is it just around Auckland, like around those islands?
Yeah, so we go around the bays and through the harbour. That's
Lovely.
real cool.
Altbays Staff Do 2023.
You could do, yeah.
Yeah, we could do. I like that. Hey, we could do a podcast from the yacht.
The audio would suck.
Wow. Special effects, we can say. Yeah. Man, how does it work? So like people hire the place. Is there a fee? Like how is it?
So there's an initial fee which I'm not exactly certain on, like what it is but it's a standard for like 4 hours or something.
How many people can you take?
I think it's 100. I'm pretty sure it's 150, which is the max.
That's us.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's us.
it's a two.
Have we got 150 friends?
Yeah, we should have your flower power thing on.
Emma, yeah, we do. Cool.
And then you pay like a $1,000 bond.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Like you just pretty much you purchase it out for a certain amount of time, and then like we have 21st, we have weddings, corporate events, birthday parties, like everything, anything you want. We have tea parties.
Oh.
I've never worked a tea party, but pretty fun.
Man, what was the reason why you decided to take geography as well?
So I thought, going into the world of politics, I'm going to need some environmental background. Well, not need, but it's handy to have an environmental background to know what the most suitable and efficient things for the environment are. Protocols around different marine protection, like MPAs, which is marine protected areas, marine reserves, rahuis, all of that kind of classifications. What one is needed where, how is it needed, the implementation of those. We did a research paper at the start of this year. It was about the Hukamuanga Matiatia Reserve on Waiheke Island. That was the proposed one from the 2021 report. And we did a big research paper around it. What it was about was what the ecology was in the area, if we needed a marine reserve, an MPA, or a Rahui and what processes were involved with getting that implemented. So the paper was called like learning how to research in geography. And we talked a lot actually about negotiating with iwi and how we shouldn't be using Māori as stakeholders in these negotiations, except we should be using them as partnerships between central and local governments and iwi. We should be using them as partners, not as stakeholders. They're not stakeholders. New Zealand European, or central government, and iwi have the requirement to both be able to negotiate with each other without having to I don't know what else to say on that.
I get what you mean.
It's important to
it goes
be partners, not stakeholders.
Kind of like what co-governance explains, right? In a way.
Yeah. Under the treaty it says that, Māori can govern themselves.
Do you focus sorry to interrupt you, do you focus on Aotearoa mainly in that course, or geography actually will take you through like examples around the world and understanding also other countries and the way that they operate?
First year was mainly, so we had to do two courses. So first year was around the natural environment and also the human. So there's two aspects. It's a lot bigger than what I thought initially, like going from high school into university level geography. It's completely different. We had a course that was surrounded by the natural environment, which we learned about waves, geomorphology, which is the rivers and the river processes and how sediment moves around there. And then we also talked about climate, and that was quite a big section. That was really hard to understand, but you kind of get your head around it eventually. It's because it's just so big and it's probably a topic by itself. And then the second course was around humans. So it was 102. Can't remember exactly what the title of the course was, but you learned about gender, sexuality, like all the different human aspects. It's kind of like sociology, kind of combined with geography. It's really confusing. A lot of information, a lot. It was kind of differentiating between gender and sexuality. And then second year's more, we did a human paper, and then obviously that research paper again, so it's still the same, but third year you go into what you want to do, same with politics.
Would you go to uni, Emma? Would you try something like that? I would love to study those things like sociology, geography. I think when I was at uni, I was not as keen as I am right now, older, to actually start tapping into studying again. Do you have any inclination to like academic studies or?
I am just so addicted to my painting that I don't think I could do anything else that wasn't creative. But I do find all those subjects really interesting, and I love listening to podcasts on these kinds of issues and like learning while I'm creating. It is. It's very interesting. I feel like it. I mean, do we get taught? Did you find a lot of what you've been doing in your papers you learn a bit of in high school, or not so much? Like through social studies, or did you take geography in high school?
The whole way through, a lot of it. In high school, it was more around the 7 key terms of geography. And we learned about like Chicago crimes, and it's a lot different to what I thought it was going to be. Obviously, the crimes paper at high school would be kind of under the human geography aspect of things. I don't think I would say I learnt. We haven't covered anything from high school. It's been really different. Yeah, like there's not much similarity. Yeah, I would say. I think the NCA, the geography NCA. Part is kind of
just very basic. Yeah,
basic understandings.
So what career are you pursuing with all these studies that you're going?
Yeah, so I've had a few career choices kind of planted in my view since I was probably about year 9, so probably about 13. I was going to go to the Navy and do some force work.
Oh, cool.
And use geography in that with also politics. and do disaster response. So like if someone had a volcanic eruption, I'd know what to do with the responses in geography, and I'd also know how to communicate diplomatically. But I've kind of gone away from that, and I want to use geography with diplomatics still, but just in a different area. Like foreign affairs, I think would be my best option. I really want to go into foreign affairs because it's a bit more diplomatic than geography based, but you still have to kind of know geopolitics. So yeah.
What countries are the hard ones to have affairs with nowadays?
See, the hard ones. See, the hard ones are the ones that I'd actually love to have. Like if I was an ambassador of Iraq or Iran or like in those war-torn countries, I would love that. A lot of people say that they wouldn't because it's, too scary or too conflictable. But I've always said, that'd be so fun. Like, well, not fun, but it'd be so interesting to...
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge because a completely different way of seeing life and culture, background and all that stuff.
Yeah. It'd be really informative.
And I understand the fun words that you put there. You didn't mean fun. You're like, hey.
It's like, hey, there's war. But
this is challenging. This is going to be new for me. Like there's a fun element to each work and career that keeps you going, right? So I get what you mean, bro.
Yeah, it'd be hard to navigate. But I mean, I'm always up for a challenge. Like I love to do just things that are just out of my box. Like I won't ever be kind of stuck into my own little circle. But in terms of the best, the hardest would be Iraq and Iran and the war-torn Middle East. And I think, London's always kind of everyone's top pick. But if I wasn't to go, it would be London, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, or I could do Argentina or Chile, or just doing an island would be fun, like Papua New Guinea or just whatever. So you got to start somewhere.
So that involves all sorts of issues, right? Like representing New Zealand, you would go for the good and for the bad. You just have to be ready to.
So you're effectively a foreign policy officer. So you're making sure that New Zealand's interests are seen overseas in that place you're representing,
right?
But also that you communicate their interests back to New Zealand, and you're pretty much just the link between the two nations. If you watch Diplomat on Netflix, really good. It's a bit romanticized, but it's quite good.
Yeah.
Shows both sides.
So when a country does something crazy and like kills a lot of people, invades another one, and then Prime Minister goes on the radio and says, we don't support that, blah, 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 blah. So was the affairs person who went to check the situation and supported with what words should be said? And is that what it is? Someone that breaks down what actually happened? Would that be kind of the job?
One of the examples that came up recently was a question was asked to the Prime Minister about China's relations with Taiwan. Yeah. And obviously the Prime Minister has a say in that, but ultimately it's also up for the diplomats to discuss on a diplomatic level. It's for the negotiations to happen, but behind closed doors and to sort out issues. And I know this is actually from a movie that I kind of analysed, or the diplomat that I analysed, is that, one of the directors of that movie was a diplomat, and he was trying to illustrate the challenges of that job through it, which is why it's quite good. And he illustrated that the challenges are when the top bosses, like the foreign affairs minister, or in the US it's the secretary of state, if they come and visit, it can actually hinder things. It can move progress, sometimes in the wrong direction. It can kind of influence some diplomatic representatives quite badly, but it's all part of the job. I think it'd be quite fun, like, having to raise challenges with people, you negotiate and see common sense on both sides of the table. But it'd be good.
Diplomacy, diplomats. We hope to bring you back as a diplomat next time on the show. Well, I guess it's a very long journey to become a diplomat, right? I had a friend in Brazil, video editor, amazing. Tiaguinho will never be watching our show, but there's a big kiss for you, my friends.
Yeah.
By the waves in life and energy. And I think his father was a diplomat, and one of those people, like the tattoo parts of the world that he goes, and his thing was like visiting all the towns and all the cities in Brazil, you know, like, which is a massive country, but he loved all the little pockets, you know, of that nation. And like years of studying and like very complicated things that he would go through to understand those relationships, man.
It is. It's a they often say it's like one of the most tiring jobs in the world. Like, you're constantly up thinking, what can I do here? How can I kind of get around this? Persuasion and convincing is a big thing in that. So you often find that a lot of diplomats have studied communications at a university or got a diploma in it, a little degree. But we learn to now, because I study a comms class for an elective, and we're learning about how persuasion is actually tapping into the emotional elements of a person. So if I wanted to persuade you, I would kind of figure out, you know, what your emotional topics were, and then kind of relate to. It's really strategical. It's kind of cynical in a way.
And a lot of politicians tap into emotions. Politics is such an emotionally charged thing for people, and that's how leaders become so popular, right? How you get those like really charismatic people. Yeah,
it's a very persuasive environment, whereas convincing is more around facts and figures and, you know, having the backing of certain statistics. Yeah, I like persuasion more because it's a bit more.
Yeah, a lot of people
communicative.
Yeah, if you present someone a fact or if you say a statement that really taps into their emotion, even if it contradicts what the actual reality is, they're going to go for the like emotional thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, what a cool show. It had a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
A bit of a debate, a bit of agreeing, disagreeing, but I feel like that's why we exist. That's why we're here for, man. You know, like to
agree,
first of all, agree, disagree, but like find those ways to work together.
Yeah.
And I feel like we miss the point when we do all those things and still we cannot cooperate. We had Narino Tewati on the show last Thursday. Tuesday. And again, when people know something, they break down in very basic concepts, and that was what he's saying. You know, like the beehive. Apparently, the Maori king in his coronation, he said that when you look at a beehive, there's a lot of collaboration going on there. You know, like, and then you look at a beehive, as a politics perspective, like we have to collaborate. We have to find those spaces where we're working towards the best for the people, you know.
Yeah.
It might take some disagreements, but we gotta find the middle ground, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I like it.
Yeah, so thank you.
It's a good
it was a great analogy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good one.
Beautiful one. It makes sense, you know, like it's just not taking the words seriously. You know? We should be working together, so that's it. Emma.
Thank you for having me.
Emma Evangeline Gustafson on Instagram. Your art just keeps evolving as you evolve as a human, as a beautiful person. Thank you so much for being supportive of what we do.
Thanks for having me.
What's cooking in the studio for the season? What's happening?
I'm sort of working on a new body of work at the moment. I'm going to have an exhibition in February, and I'm doing the market season here in Whitty, so keep an eye out for me down in town every Saturday. And
Do you know where the exhibition is going to be on February or not yet?
It's going to be at Christine Rabart's space, so I've got the
Coromandel
first 2
Town.
weeks of so I'm going to be in there, and I might do a few festivals, painting, and over summer, but that's what I'm up to.
Keep us posted so we can promote that again.
Thank you.
My bro, what's happening? What are the next steps in Matt's life? Tomorrow, some cocktails.
Yeah. There's quite a bit. Campaigning's a big part of my life at the moment. Obviously helping Helen and doing what I can there, making sure she wins Mount Albert. And then, work, university. I'm still trying to finish my paper on colonialism's effect on New Zealand's legitimacy as a state, which is very interesting. So far I've found that colonialism's had a huge impact on the legitimacy of New Zealand state, and for obvious reasons, through segregation, oppression, like all of the systemic injustices that have happened to the Māori people, is because of one thing only.
Here we go.
Colonialism.
Colonialism, guys.
It is sad.
Say it again, Matt. Say it again, Matt.
Colonialism's the problem.
Say it again. No,
but so that'll be interesting when I have the full findings of that. But it's really interesting. I've opened up to a whole wide view of different things because we have to have agreeable resources and also ones that are against it. So you have to kind of pile it all in and figure out what one's what. But
yeah, undoing things might not be possible, but reparations and making things even and fair.
It needs
always
to be
possible,
happening.
Right?
It has to happen, like now, if not yesterday, like ASAP.
Yeah. Do you think New Zealand's doing enough?
No.
Do you still do work with the Commonwealth?
That was in 2021 where I was selected for the role, and then COVID kind of happened. So it was still a thing, but we couldn't do it because of COVID.
Right.
But yeah,
it might happen.
Could do.
But
yeah, that was a high school era.
There you go.
Yeah.
Shout out to our beautiful supporters of this amazing show. Cooked Coromando, Arriba, beautiful Kai. Did you guys enjoy the food?
It was really good.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Good stuff.
Love my quesadilla.
They're doing beautiful things. Check them out. Cooked Coromando. We had them on the screen the whole show. Easy to find them on the socials. And Peninsula Motel. Shout out to Fred, making sure that all our guests sleep well in warm beds. Was he there to welcome you when you arrived, Fred?
Yes, he was. Yeah,
Good man.
He's great. He's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to Peninsula Motel, and shout out to Taylor behind the screens, making the show happen.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, bro. My pleasure. We'll be back on Tuesday, and it's a good opportunity to learn. I'm not gonna give too much information because every time that I do that,
something changes.
Things change every time. But I'm just gonna say that next week it will be a great opportunity to learn more about the kaupapa in this area.
Awesome.
So there will be some cool things happening next week. Stay with us. Thank you so much, team.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Peace.
See ya.